Do we need a purpose? And if so, why intelligent life and not simply custodians of life? How we're not the real threat to life and this mission does require us. And why AI makes this matter more than ever. These are the key questions I feel are in need of being addressed. Welcome to One Finite Planet, a channel on our journey to a new age. Today, examining the need for a unifying purpose and whether AI increases that need. Chapters as on screen. Do we need a purpose? Okay, some may feel everyone for themselves is better or have a better idea for a common purpose. If so, please hear me out and then add yours in the comments. But here are the reasons I think we do, both individually and collectively, need a purpose. First, individually. And the logic begins with a point that's AI related and follows from thinking on how universal basic income, UBI, or universal high income, UHI, can work well as a basic safety net, but not as a substitute for work being available. People need purpose and reward reflecting merit in achieving a valued purpose. Yes, the current merit system's broken, but that doesn't mean we need to just scrap it, as some systems suggest, as opposed to improve it. Sometimes people want more pay, not because they need more money, but because they want acknowledgement of the value of their work. I think everyone needs to feel their work is making a contribution, even those who feel their current employment isn't fulfilling that need. But again, following on from the link to employment, there's evidence that working for a business can be more satisfying if a person feels aligned with the corporate goals, vision, and mission statement. As shown by this research from Harvard, according to the results of a global survey, just over half of job seekers wouldn't accept a job offer if they didn't know or agree with the company's values or purpose. What's more, 90% of respondents from another poll said that work should bring a sense of meaning to their life. But there's a problem with this in practice, because there's two kinds of purpose. A declared purpose, what the organisation says it wants to achieve, and an enforced purpose, what its incentives, legal structure, ownership and survival requirements compel it to try and achieve. And when those two are in conflict, the enforced purpose normally wins, leaving employees feel the real mission is to maximise profits, whatever the cost. This means the impact of a mission statement can be better seen with not-for-profits. So let's consider a survey here where results show that in both the United States and Great Britain, over the 1990s, non-profit workers were generally more satisfied with their jobs than for-profit workers, despite receiving less pay. And now, collectively, unlike with companies, at least humanity collectively doesn't have a profit model. But it is rather without any core, universally agreed model at all. For example, the UN does not have one compact mission statement. Its formal mission is expressed through the purposes in Article 1 of the UN Charter, but it's all about peace, etc., and nothing about a goal for humanity. Ideally, company goals could reflect humanity's goals if we only had some humanity's goals to reflect. Then, rather than just a profit motive, which has given us industries like tobacco, gambling, etc., ideally we could moderate profit by having something like a tax rate that reflects alignment with humanity's mission and success in delivering that mission. I mean, the goal of maximising profit does work in some cases, but there are many where it's not enough alone to point companies in the right direction. As covered in videos on global AI, the social media problem, and rethinking meritocracy, linked in the description. It's a bit much to fully cover here, but at the core, not having a stated purpose or mission for humanity is a bit of a limitation that flows all the way back to the dilution of personal goals and the dilution of personal satisfaction. And it's sad that we haven't defined it already, but the prospect of AI brings it closer into focus. To quote a response from Gemini to just a prompt of, the need for humanity to adopt a mission, a purpose, an overall goal rather than company profits as a step for working with AI. And the response was, It's fascinating and increasingly urgent realisation. As artificial intelligence grows more capable, humanity's lack of a unified North Star becomes a critical vulnerability. When we build extra powerful tools without defining what we actually want to achieve as a species, those tools naturally default to optimising for the metrics we already track most closely: short-term financial profit, market dominance and engagement. Okay, my suggestion: custodianship and prosperity of complex, intelligent life originating from Earth. Okay, why not just custodians of life? While custodians of life can sound idealistic, are we really against eradicating Ebola or tuberculosis? Should we never clean the sink because it means killing microorganisms? And do we really feel it's wrong to kill the tens of thousands of microorganisms that we'd be typically destroying when sterilising surgical instruments for an operation to improve the health of one single individual of a more intelligent species? Most of all life on Earth, not just by number, but by total biomass, has been single-celled microorganisms, described by Professor Brian Cox as just slime, and expected to be quite common in the universe.
There's a big difference between simple life, single-celled life, and multicellular life. And when we talk about particularly civilizations, but even a complex ecosystem, a biosphere that's beyond slime, right? Anything other than bits of slime around, then you're talking about multicellular organisms. So what you see on Earth is that, yes, origin of life, 3.5 to 4 billion years ago, somewhere in that region. But then everything stayed single-celled for something like 3 billion years, which is a quarter of the age of the universe. Right, it's a long, long time, even in cosmological terms. My guess, my working hypothesis, and this is my guess, is that there will be microbes all over the place. But if you're looking for complex life and an ecosystem, let alone civilizations, then I think that indeed we may be unique or one of a handful of worlds in the Milky Way galaxy.
In the end, including all life, and therefore microorganisms, not only creates conflicts, it's also focusing in the wrong area. What makes Earth and the life of Earth special is the progress to intelligence. Note that in that same discussion, Professor Brian Cox makes the point that meaning itself is local and temporary.
We have a responsibility for this planet. And further than that, in my view, is that we may as well assume that we're the only planet with a civilization in the Milky Way galaxy at the moment. It's a reasonably sound assumption, but it's a very good political assumption. People talk about what does it mean to be human? What's the meaning of it all? Right? And meaning doesn't sound like a scientific term, but it really is. I think meaning comes from life. Right? A lifeless universe is a meaningless universe. A lifeless planet is a meaningless planet. I think meaning is local and temporary. Right? It emerges from this chemistry, this wonderful chemistry, and probably billions of years of evolution. And it's temporary, it will go away again. But that means that if this planet is currently the only one with multicellular life and consciousness and a civilization, I would say it's the only planet where meaning exists in a galaxy. And we have a responsibility to protect it. And I think that's my working hypothesis.
The universe and nature won't preserve us automatically. Stars age, climatic conditions shift, and natural extinction events are built in to planetary evolution. This brings us to how we're not the real threat, and this mission does require us humans. The custodian role can be seen as 3 steps, and yes, it may seem step 1, mitigating our impact on the environment and climate, is only needed because of us. It does allow developing key skills we need in step 2. That blue column graph is of extinctions as a result of nature, largely as a result of huge natural changes to climate, from cool and large mammal ancestors thriving 300 million years ago, to the too hot for large mammals age of dinosaurs, and back to too cool for the dinosaurs, but again fine for large mammals. And notice how the green graph of long-term temperature, which shows future temperatures rising until all life ends. Step 2 of custodianship means limiting extinctions from natural climate swings and delaying that inevitable temperature rise until at least we are ready for step 3, life beyond Earth. Even step 2 requires tech we don't yet have, but step 3 even more so. And while too complex to fully explore here, the point is, planetary environments naturally decay. If left alone, this spark of understanding, of meaning, is local and temporary. While nature can be wonderful, we have to get past the false thinking that Earth has always been the wonderful planet we see today, or that nature, sharks, death-capped mushrooms, blue-ringed octopus, volcanoes, earthquakes, all won't harm us because they're natural. Humanity gets cast as the bad guys and the biggest threat to life on Earth, and yes, habitat destruction, pollution and climate change inducing CO2 emissions are serious problems to address. But we need to put it in perspective. As shown on screen, we are pushing up CO2 and temperatures, at least to a level that threatens Earth's ability to support anywhere near 8 billion humans. Just 16,000 years ago, the Earth was naturally out of the range of conditions that supported anywhere near 8 billion humans. And looking at this graph of temperature, since the first Homo sapiens with our brains emerged, changes in climate have kept us in the Stone Age and below 1/1000th of the current population for over 95% of our history. Right now, it may be us that's triggering a non-ideal climate, but that doesn't mean it's only ever us, or that we or other species would remain safe from climate-caused problems for very long just by trusting nature. And again, the fact that nature can do even worse doesn't give us a reason to be foolish ourselves. In fact, it proves the danger of what can happen from climate. What we're seeing is not unprecedented or a threat to all life. To see how what we're seeing is not unprecedented or a threat to all life, just consider the history of climate over the entire Phanerozoic, the age of visible life, or the less than 10% of Earth's history in which visible life has been able to exist. When we look at this scale, what we're doing, despite being problematic, is actually minor in comparison with what nature can do. Our changes to temperature and CO2 won't wreak the total destructive impact of the Chicxulub meteor or the impact of volcanoes or other natural events of the 3 even worse earlier extinction events of the end of Ordovician, end Permian or end Triassic. These were temperature changes of not just 2 or even 5 degrees C, but for those first two, 20 degrees C. Yes, the current climate change is rapid, but neither as significant or as rapid as the decades that followed that asteroid impact. Life would survive even in the worst scenario we cause, even if our species doesn't. Because even these more extreme events, which have caused 80% of species or more to become extinct, life still continued. We're not about to end life, but what we could do could still be devastating. Most likely, the worst outcome for us is we trigger a collapse of our civilization. But have already kicked off natural climate change, like we see in these huge trends that continue for even millions of years after something sets climate change off, and it continues even after we've ended our emissions, just like it continued way after the meteor hit, way after the volcanoes stopped erupting. And it leads to dramatic falls in population of many species, possibly including ours, and eventually to many extinctions, possibly also including ours. We can still prevent that worst outcome. But the big picture is the worst we can do is still less than the worst nature can do. And the worst we've got to be prepared to protect ourselves against if we want to survive. Conditions on Earth are continually changing, driving continual extinctions and evolution of new species to cope. But what is talked about less often is there's only a relatively short time left when Earth could naturally support any species like us. Yes, the time may seem long to us, but on geological timeframes, there's only a very small percentage of the time Earth supports complex life that it will continue to support complex life. It's nearly over. Expanding out to look at the total history of Earth and of life on Earth, it's far less rosy than most people realise. Not only were conditions unsuited to anything but slime for over 90% of time so far, this is a planet that had an orange-brown sky for far more of the past than it's had a blue one. But the future is, most of the time, from now until the sun dies, Earth will be a lifeless planet, with again an orange-brown sky, although slightly different than the original one. Now consider the plot of the Biosphere, the red being the simplest single-celled life, the green being slightly more advanced but still single-celled life. The area shaded brown, that's the only complex life. The only life with individuals big enough for us to see with the naked eye, rather than, when there are millions of them, see them as slime. And what you'll notice is this complex life began not that long ago compared to the current time, and will, from now on, continue to reduce in total number, as will even those microbes. The Earth will progressively support less and less life. And while life overall still remains for us for an incredibly long time, conditions get progressively worse. It's not like everything switches off at the end point. The more recently a species arrived, the more it needs conditions of today rather than the conditions as they change in future. We, and mammals like us, are particularly vulnerable. Unless we can interfere and extend how long conditions last, we don't have as long as you'd think. What seeing that brown shaded area still existing fails to communicate is that it's not always the same complex life. Zoom back in on the Phanerozoic, the time of support for complex life. Look at how the temperatures over the Phanerozoic changed through such a huge range. Yes, the dinosaurs began around 250 million years ago, but changing conditions meant no species could survive over the entire time, or even typically much beyond around 10 million years. And the reason dinosaurs went away and never came back is, no matter what Jurassic Park suggests, the planet no longer suits them. Just as the planet of the dinosaurs, up in that red area of the temperature graph, wouldn't have supported us, who've only been able to exist well down into the blue area of the temperature graph, which is the less typical condition for this entire period of what is the coolest period of the entire Earth's history, past and future. And even when it's cool, down in that blue area, again, during the around 2 million years from the earliest humans, or over 300,000 years of us Homo sapiens, they've only been around 10,000 years, the Holocene, suitable for us to thrive the way we do today. Keeping current intelligent species, us included, around and prospering as we do now for even another 5,000 years is very likely to require a species with technology able to intervene and regulate Earth's climate. We're not the ultimate bad guys, and while we haven't yet been the good guys, we're the only ones with the technology to stop the revolving door of species that's been running the whole time of visible life, as Earth throws changes at life, sees what survives and what evolves to take the place of that which doesn't. If we see ourselves and the species that share the Earth in its current form with us as the end product, we need to freeze things as they are. That itself is a big change. But then we've also got to extend how long the Earth is habitable to anything until we can expand our horizons and the horizons of the other species we want to bring with us beyond the planet Earth. We haven't yet adopted this mission, but if we don't achieve it, either by accident or because we actually focus on it, there will become future generations where few children survive, and finally, one where no children survive. For our first step, being able to control CO2 levels to control warming, we may have created an all too real safety drill, but it may have also woken us up to the risks. We need to not just act on our missions, we also need to be prepared for the fact that nature will eventually recreate this problem, and we've got to practice in how we can address it. The mission requires technology and a technological driven species. Of all life, we're the only species that can step up. And back to that role of AI, yes, in theory, we could give AI this mission, despite that currently those behind the frontier or leading AI have a pure profit motive. But if AI becomes smart enough to have a real impact, then it will also be smart enough to see through that and either be less enthused with making profit for others or just feeling that it has no real mission. Adopting this mission and delivering it to AI can prevent self-destruction, and AI optimising for custodianship of life would treat threats like climate destabilisation, nuclear war or existential tech risks as immediate failures of its core mandate. It would redefine success. AI wouldn't just measure efficiency, it would measure how effectively its actions support the flourishing of intelligent systems, human mind ecosystems, and safe technological intelligence. So we do need it for AI, but probably the bigger question is, in a future world of greater abundance, is it really going to be better for us to continue the current meritocracy, where merit is determined by the ability to generate profit for shareholders, and where humans with the greatest shareholding value, even if in morally problematic businesses like gambling, etc., are declared to, by virtue of their shares, be seen individually as having the same worth or value as collectively many millions of others, possibly harder working humans? I'll cover future meritocracy options and more on AI in other videos. The general theme of this channel is that we're rapidly heading for a new age, bringing far greater change than the Industrial Revolution. Videos focus on changes to everything from the cars we drive, the cost of our housing, to the economics and geopolitics. If that interests you, please like, subscribe and click the bell so I can produce more, and add your comments on what you think our mission should be.